My parents forced me out of the family business after 20 years of blood, sweat, and logistical nightmares. You're stuck in the old ways, Veronica. My dad sat across the mahogany dinner table, a table I had personally sourced the lumber for, his voice cold, final, and devoid of fatherly affection. Travis represents the future. You've only gotten this far because of our generosity. My mom didn't even look at me. She was too busy inspecting her wine glass when she added, "It's time for someone with fresh energy to take the reins, dear. We need vision, not just management." My younger brother sat there and smirked. It was that entitlement-fueled grin I'd wanted to wipe off his face for 3 decades. "Yeah, Ronnie," he said, leaning back like he already owned the place. "You've been bleeding the company dry with your cautious approach for years. We need to scale." They slid a resignation letter toward me across the polished wood. "Sign it," my father commanded, "or we terminate you for cause." Restructuring. You leave with nothing. They called it a voluntary resignation. I knew exactly what it was. It was a constructive dismissal, a forced ousting designed to bypass the severance package outlined in the shareholder agreement I'd signed 10 years ago. They thought they had me cornered. They thought I would cry, beg, or make a scene. I stayed calm. My pulse didn't even jump. "Okay," I said, my voice steady. "I'll resign, but I'm not signing your draft. I'll write my own letter right now." I pulled out my phone and typed one single sentence. They were so eager to get rid of me, so desperate to hand the keys to the kingdom over to their golden boy, that they didn't bother to parse the legal syntax. 1 week later, my phone rang at 8:22 a.m. It was an unknown number, but I knew who it was. "Miss Brooks, this is Alan Fletcher, the corporate attorney for Brooks Fine Furniture," he said. His voice was tight, professional, but laced with a hint of panic. "We need to clarify the precise language in your resignation letter. Specifically, the clause regarding the resignation being effective only upon full settlement of all agreements." I didn't explain a thing to them at the time, I replied, sipping my coffee. I assumed they could read. You said a condition," he stammered. "I stated a fact," I corrected. "You'll figure it out." Dead silence on the line for a long moment. Then he cleared his throat, muttered something about getting back to me, and hung up. But to understand why I stayed so calm while my own parents and brother were betraying me to my face, you have to understand the history. You have to understand the leverage I had built, brick by brick, board by board. My name is Veronica Brooks, and I'm 43 years old. I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a city that breathes sawdust and varnish. Grand Rapids has a legacy as the furniture capital of America, and my family contributed to that legacy. Brooks Fine Furniture was founded by my father, Gregory Brooks, in 1995. He started it in a drafty garage with a table saw and a dream of crafting high-quality, hand-built hardwood furniture. No particle board, no flat-pack nonsense. Just solid oak, cherry, and walnut, built to outlive the buyer. I was there from the beginning. I wasn't just the founder's daughter. I was the cheap labor. I spent my weekends, holidays, and summer breaks in that shop. While other kids were at the lake, I was sweeping sawdust, learning to grade lumber and understanding the difference between a quarter-sawn plank and a rift-sawn one. I learned the business from the floor up. I knew how to calibrate the wide-belt sanders so they didn't gouge the veneer. I knew the exact humidity levels required for the kiln drying process to prevent warping 6 months down the line. I learned the chemistry of the finishes, catalyzed lacquers, conversion varnishes, and how to apply them so they looked like glass. When I graduated from Western Michigan University in 2008 with a degree in supply chain management, I didn't go off to work for some Fortune 500 logistics giant. I came home. I joined Brooks Fine Furniture full-time. Back then, we had maybe 25 employees. It was a chaotic operation. My dad was a brilliant craftsman, but he was a terrible businessman. Inventory was tracked on scrap paper. Orders were missed. Shipping was a nightmare. I came in as the operations coordinator, a fancy title for the person who fixes everything. Over the next 20 years, I didn't just work there. I built the infrastructure that allowed the company to survive and eventually thrive. I constructed 3 distinct pillars that held the roof up, pillars my family conveniently forgot about. The first pillar was technical mastery. I wasn't just a suit in an office. I was a supply chain expert who could run every machine on the floor. The guys in the shop, the veteran woodworkers, the finishers, the CNC operators, they respected me because I could do their jobs. If the massive edge bander went down, I was the one with the schematics and the grease gun helping maintenance fix it to meet a deadline. I developed our proprietary inventory tracking system. I streamlined the flow of raw materials from the lumber yards in northern Michigan directly to our loading docks, cutting waste by 14%. I knew the proprietary blend of stains we used for our Heritage Cherry line better than the chemist who mixed them. I was the institutional memory of the production floor. The second pillar was client relationships. Around year 5, my dad realized he hated talking to customers. He just wanted to build tables, so I took over account management. I wasn't just selling furniture, I was selling reliability. I secured contracts with high-end national retailers who trusted me personally. I landed the deal with a luxury hotel chain that furnished their lobbies exclusively with our work. I cultivated relationships with interior designers in Chicago and New York who wouldn't give my dad the time of day because he lacked polish. These weren't just company clients, they were Veronica's clients. They knew that if they called me at 6 p.m. on a Friday about a shipping error, it would be fixed by Monday morning. I negotiated multi-year supply agreements that stabilized our cash flow and allowed us to weather economic downturns. The third and most critical pillar was ownership. My parents, despite their flaws, believed in keeping it in the family legally. When I hit my 30s and the company began generating real revenue thanks to my systems, we structured a formal shareholder agreement. It was designed to protect the business. It stated that continued employment and hitting specific performance KPIs earned me equity. It wasn't a gift, it was compensation. By age 42, I had accumulated a significant minority stake. It wasn't enough to outvote my parents combined, but it was enough to matter. Crucially, that agreement had clauses. Dense, boring legal clauses regarding change of control and severance upon involuntary termination. My father had insisted on them years ago, ironically, to protect me in case the company was ever sold to a private equity firm. He wanted to ensure his daughter would be taken care of. He never imagined those clauses would be the weapon used against him. For a long time, things were good. We were profitable. I was the vice president of operations, effectively running the company while my parents played the role of benevolent figureheads. Then, about 4 years ago, the dynamic shifted. My parents started talking about retirement. They wanted to buy a condo in Florida. They wanted to travel, and suddenly the conversation turned to succession. In a rational world, the successor would be the person with the relevant degree, 20 years of experience, and the respect of the entire staff. But we don't live in a rational world. We live in a world where my younger brother Travis exists. Travis Brooks is approximately 35 years old. 7 years my junior. For most of his 20s, Travis found himself. He tried to be a DJ. He tried to sell real estate, but never closed a deal. He worked in sales for a beer distributor for 6 months and got fired for attendance issues. 4 years ago, my parents decided it was time for Travis to join the legacy. They brought him in as a special projects manager. To give him credibility, they paid for him to get an executive MBA. You know the type, one of those pay-to-play programs where you go to class on alternate weekends for 20 months and come out thinking you're Steve Jobs. Travis came back from that program armed with a vocabulary of buzzwords and zero practical knowledge. He talked about disruptive innovation, blue ocean strategy, and synergy. He didn't know the difference between hard maple and soft maple, but he had a PowerPoint presentation on why we should pivot to direct-to-consumer digital experiences. My parents ate it up. My father, Gregory, who had always been a bit insecure about his lack of formal education, looked at Travis like he was a wizard. "Travis really understands the modern market," Dad would say at Sunday dinner. "He's got that aggressive vision we need." My mother, ever the enabler, would chime in. "He just has such a command of the room." He reminds me of you, Gregory, when you were young. It started with small slights. I'd be in a meeting discussing supply chain logistics, warning them that lumber prices were spiking, and Travis would interrupt. "Ronnie, you're too focused on the weeds. We need to focus on the brand story." And my dad would nod. "He's right, Ronnie, don't be so negative." Then came the erosion of my authority. Travis started hiring his friends for made-up marketing roles. He bypassed my procurement protocols to order cheaper, inferior hardware for our cabinets because it improved margin. When the hardware failed and clients complained, I was the one who had to clean up the mess. But when I brought it up to my parents, they brushed it off. "He's learning, Veronica. You need to be more supportive. He's trying to innovate." I watched over 4 years as the favor shifted entirely to him. They invested in his ideas while cutting the budget for my department. They sent him to the trade shows in Milan and High Point, while I stayed back to manage the factory floor. They introduced him to key clients as the future CEO, while I was introduced as the operations manager. It wasn't subtle. It was a slow-motion coup. I'm not an idiot. I saw the writing on the wall about 2 years ago. That's when I hired Diane. Diane is a shark of an employment attorney, operating out of a firm in Detroit, so there would be no conflict of interest with the local Grand Rapids legal circles. I met her for coffee 3 towns over. I laid out the situation, the nepotism, the sidelining, the shareholder agreement. Diane took one look at my documents and gave me one piece of advice. Document everything. Become a ghost in the machine. If they make a move, we need to be ready to trigger every single clause in that contract. So I did. For 2 years, I kept a shadow log. Every time Travis made a decision that cost the company money, I documented it. Every time my parents overruled my operational expertise in favor of Travis's whims, I saved the email. I kept copies of the shareholder agreement, the bylaws, and the employee handbook on a private encrypted cloud server. I built a dossier of incompetence. But more importantly, I memorized my contract. The breaking point came last Friday. I drove to my parents' house for what I thought was a standard family dinner. The atmosphere was weird as soon as I walked in. The table was set with the good china, but there was no food smell, just tension. My dad sat at the head of the table. My mom was to his right. Travis was leaning back in his chair, checking his watch, looking bored. And there was Alan Fletcher, the family attorney, sitting with a folder. We didn't even eat. We need to discuss the transition, my father said, skipping the pleasantries. Your mother and I are officially stepping down as co-CEOs next month. We're moving to the Florida house full-time. That's great, Dad, I said, though I knew what was coming. Travis will be taking over as CEO, he continued. He has the MBA. He has the vision for the next phase of Brooks Fine Furniture. I nodded slowly. I see. And where does that leave me? I assume I'll remain as VP of Operations to ensure the company doesn't collapse, Travis scoffed. That's the thing, Ronnie. We're restructuring. Your role, it's redundant. I'm bringing in a COO from my MBA cohort. Someone who gets the digital landscape. We're letting you go, Veronica, my mother said softly, as if she were telling me a pet had died. It's for the best. You've been looking tired lately. You need a break. Alan Fletcher slid the folder across the table. We've prepared a separation agreement, he said. It frames your departure as a voluntary resignation. It's cleaner that way. Helps with your future job search. If you sign this, the company will provide 3 months of severance and a positive reference. I opened the folder. It was insulting. 3 months of pay for 20 years of service. A waiver of all claims. A non-disparagement clause that would silence me forever. And crucially, a clause that forced me to sell my shares back to the company at a book value determined by their accountant, which was significantly lower than market value. And if I don't sign? I asked. My father's face hardened. Then we terminate you for cause. Insubordination. Failure to adapt to company strategy. We'll tie you up in litigation for years, Veronica. You'll get nothing, no severance, and we'll dilute your shares until they're worthless. Sign it, Travis sneered. Don't be difficult for once in your life. They thought they were holding all the cards. They thought the threat of termination for cause would terrify me. They forgot who handled the contracts for the last decade. I'll resign, I said, closing the folder. But I won't sign this. If I'm resigning, I'm writing my own letter. I want to leave with dignity, on my own terms. My father exchanged a look with Alan. Alan shrugged. As long as the resignation is clear and immediate, the format doesn't matter as much as the intent. Fine, my dad said. Write it, print it, sign it. We want this done tonight. I walked to the study where the family printer was. I opened a blank document. I typed a standard header, and then I typed the sentence. I, Veronica Brooks, hereby resign from my position as Vice President of Operations and all other capacities at Brooks Fine Furniture, effective immediately upon the full and final settlement of all agreements, financial obligations, and contractual entitlements owed to me by the company and its shareholders. I printed 2 copies. I signed them. I walked back into the dining room. I handed one to my father and one to Alan. It says I resign, I said. It's effective immediately upon the conditions listed. My father glanced at it. He saw the words resign and effective immediately. He didn't parse the rest. He just wanted the win. He wanted the uncomfortable moment to be over. Fine, Dad said. It's done. Hand over your keys and company laptop. Alan, the lawyer, should have caught it. But Alan was a real estate attorney primarily. He handled the family's property deals. He wasn't a contract specialist, and he was currently billing my dad by the hour to sit at a dinner table. He gave it a cursory glance. It appears to be an unequivocal resignation, he muttered. Travis snatched the paper from the table. Finally, now we can actually get some work done. I placed my keys on the table. Good luck, Travis. You're going to need it. I walked out of that house, got into my car, and drove home. I didn't cry. I poured myself a glass of expensive scotch and waited. That brings us back to the phone call with Alan Fletcher 1 week later. "We need to clarify the precise language," Alan repeated, his voice straining for authority. "The family is under the impression that you have resigned. However, payroll cannot process your final check because you're claiming you're still an employee." "I am still an employee," I said calmly. "Read the letter, Alan." "Effective only upon full settlement of all agreements." "Have you settled all agreements? We offered you 3 months severance. That was a verbal offer, which I rejected," I said. "My resignation is conditional on the fulfillment of the written contracts currently in place, specifically the shareholders' agreement of 2014. I could hear him shuffling papers. "What are you referring to?" "Section 4, paragraph B," I recited from memory. "In the event of a change of control, defined as a transfer of the CEO title and majority operational authority, any minority shareholder with more than 10 years of tenure is entitled to an accelerated vesting of all outstanding equity options." "And," I continued, "Section 7, paragraph C regarding constructive dismissal. By forcing me out to replace me with a family member with less than 5 years of experience, you have triggered the golden parachute clause my father insisted on adding to protect me from hostile takeovers. It applies to internal restructuring as well. Did you not read the bylaws before you advised them to fire me?" Alan was breathing heavy now. "Veronica, your father is going to be furious. He considers this extortion." "It's not extortion, Alan. It's contract law. The resignation letter they accepted, and they did accept it, they took my keys, is a binding contract. It states, 'I resign if and only if I am paid what is owed.' If they don't pay, I haven't resigned. And if I haven't resigned and they lock me out of the building, that is illegal retaliation and wrongful termination. I'll sue for triple damages." What is the number?" Alan asked, his voice a whisper. "I've had my forensic accountant run the numbers based on the last quarterly valuation, which, thanks to my supply chain optimizations, was quite high." I paused for effect. "To satisfy the full settlement clause and make my resignation effective, Brooks Fine Furniture owes me a lump sum of $1,900,000. Plus legal fees." "That's impossible," Alan choked out. "The company doesn't have that kind of liquid cash on hand. It would cripple operations." "Then I guess I haven't resigned," I said cheerfully. "I'll see you at the office on Monday." "Oh, wait, you took my keys. I guess I'll see you in court." Diane Russell will be sending over the formal demand letter within the hour. "They will fight this," Alan said, trying to regain some ground. "They're prepared to go to war." "Let them," I replied. "I built that company's entire back end. I know where every skeleton is buried. I know about the OSHA violations Travis ignored last month. I know about the creative accounting used to minimize tax liability on the inventory write-offs. If they want to go to war, tell them to bring a bigger army." I hung up the phone. The $1.9 million was the kill shot. But the real beauty was the timing. The busy season for high-end furniture is the pre-holiday rush, which starts right about now. And without me to manage the supply chain while they scrambled to find nearly $2 million in cash, the company was about to face a hurricane with a toddler at the helm. But the family wasn't going to roll over that easily. My father was a stubborn man, and Travis was a delusional one. They decided to try and call my bluff. The first move was a calculated lowball, an offer of 6 months severance and a partial bonus payout to resolve this amicably." "That falls far short," I answered calmly. "The documents are clear." The calls escalated in frequency over the next few days. Alan, the family attorney, became the reluctant courier for my parents' emotional turbulence. He relayed messages of disappointment, frustration, and manipulative appeals to family loyalty. Travis got on a call directly, his voice raising the moment he spoke. "You're holding the company hostage over wording," he demanded. "No," I corrected him, keeping my voice level. "You're facing consequences for not reading carefully." Gregory, my father, joined another conversation later that week, sounding weary. "Veronica, think about what this does to all of us. Just take the original offer and move on. Don't destroy what we built," I held firm. "The offer doesn't match what is owed." "I didn't destroy it. I secured my portion of it." Brooks tried separately, her voice softer, playing the maternal card she hadn't used when they fired me. "We never meant for it to come to this. Can't we find a middle ground?" Diane, my attorney, reviewed every exchange, advising me to stay factual and documented. "Don't engage with the emotion," she warned. "That's their leverage. Yours is the contract." Alan's tone shifted over the weeks. His early confidence gave way to urgency as he realized the trap I had set was watertight. He began acknowledging specific clauses during our conference calls. "The vesting acceleration does appear triggered," he admitted, while still pushing lower numbers to save his clients money. They countered with 9 months' pay and half the equity value. I declined. Then 12 months plus full bonus, but no vesting. Declined again. Each refusal prompted longer pauses, consultations I could hear in background murmurs. They were realizing that I wasn't bluffing, and more importantly, that I wasn't going to break. One evening call included all of them on speaker. Travis accused me of greed. Gregory warned about legal costs eating into the very settlement I was chasing. My mother pleaded for peace. I repeated the same points. Contracts accepted. Letter received. Enforceable terms. Alan finally interrupted the family. "She's correct on the key provisions," he said, cutting off Travis's latest outburst. "Fighting this risks significant exposure. If this goes to court, the books open up." The panic became palpable. Offers climbed. 15 months, then full severance with partial vesting. Still short, Diane sent formal demand letters outlining case law on conditional resignations and shareholder rights in closely held companies. We made it clear that if they fired me now, it was retaliation. If they didn't pay, I hadn't resigned. They were in a deadlock of their own making. The final counter came after 3 weeks of back and forth. Alan called alone. "We're prepared to meet the full amount," he said, his voice flat. $1,900,000 wired within 10 business days, plus your documented legal fees, in exchange for a mutual release and confidentiality. I confirm the terms match the contracts, he added. "Your family hopes this ends matters cleanly." "I agree to the settlement," I said. After several tense weeks of finalizing the paperwork, the money finally arrived in my account. The day the wire transfer arrived in full, totaling $1.92 million. Along with Diane's legal fees covered, I didn't feel a fist-pumping sense of victory. I just felt relief. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the bank notification. The amount matched every penny outlined in the agreements. The settlement release was signed by all parties. My resignation became official the moment the funds cleared. I blocked the family phone numbers that same afternoon. No dramatic messages, no final explanations, just silence. Emails from my parents went unread and directly to an archive folder. Travis tried reaching out once through a mutual cousin. I didn't respond. The cutoff was complete. No holidays, no updates, no contact. The people who raised me became strangers by choice, mine this time. In the months that followed, news about Brooks Fine Furniture reached me through industry channels and former colleagues who still checked in occasionally. The first major contract loss came about 4 months later. A long-standing national retailer decided not to renew. They cited inconsistent communication and missed customization details that had never been an issue during my tenure. Travis was handling the account personally by then, but the relationship had always rested on trust built over years, trust tied to my direct involvement. Other clients followed gradually. A luxury chain in the Midwest reduced orders, mentioning quality variations in recent shipments. Resorts that relied on seasonal collections delayed commitments, waiting for assurance on timelines they once took for granted. Production challenges surfaced too. Without my supply chain oversight, delays in material sourcing led to late deliveries. Finish inconsistencies appeared in pieces that reached showrooms. Employees who messaged me privately described confusion over standards that used to be second nature. Travis pushed new initiatives, online direct sales, influencer partnerships, promises of faster turnaround. Some gained temporary attention, but core clients in the high-end hardwood market wanted reliability over flash. They wanted the Brooks standard, which had left the building with me. Revenue dipped quarter by quarter. By the end of the first year, the decline was unmistakable. Several key craftsmen, the backbone of the shop floor, retired early or left for competitors. Suppliers tightened credit terms after late payments. The company that once grew steadily now fought to hold ground. My parents postponed their retirement plans indefinitely. The freedom they sought by ousting me evaporated as they stepped back in to stabilize operations. Travis worked longer hours, but the gaps in his institutional knowledge were too wide to bridge with an MBA alone. I followed none of it closely. Occasional updates came unasked, industry reports, mutual acquaintances mentioning struggles. I acknowledged them without engagement. I moved forward on my own terms. Consulting work started small, helping other manufacturers streamline processes and advising on contracts for family-run businesses. My rates reflected my experience. Clients valued straightforward guidance without emotional baggage. Life simplified. No family obligations, no expectations tied to blood. Decisions rested solely on what served me. The settlement provided absolute security. My investments grew quietly. I relocated to a smaller place outside Grand Rapids, closer to the lakes and away from the noise. I never regretted the silence. Attempts at reconciliation came once or twice. Brief emails from my mother expressing sadness. A voicemail from my father suggesting coffee. I left them unanswered. The company continued sliding. Market share eroded further as competitors filled the voids we used to dominate. The Brooks name lost some of its former weight in Michigan manufacturing circles. I learned a clear lesson from the entire experience. In a family business, affection doesn't replace clear paperwork. Assumptions about loyalty can cost everything. Document your rights early. Enforce them without hesitation when necessary, and accept that protecting yourself sometimes means walking away completely, even from the people closest to you. That's the reality I live with now. Cold, perhaps, but solvent, peaceful, and free.